Renters struggling to pay. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I have my stein of coffee, and I thought we'd have a look at this Domain article discussing, well, just the renters who are snubbed and struggling to pay. Now, the last time Rachel and I rented a property before we moved into this house we bought here, it was in Kangaroo Point in Brisbane on Wellington Road. So we had 6 lanes of traffic next to us every morning, and, you know, a pub up the road near the Pineapple Hotel. So you'd have the ruffians walking around. Whenever there was the footy, there was lots of drinking and screaming and noise at the Gabba. And, you know, it was an okay neighbourhood. It was fine for when we were finishing off our university and when we started, you know, coming together as a couple and working in the city before we had our first child. And we were paying rent that was not too bad. But to get our rent cheaper, we did a few interesting things. The most drastic thing was we had a roommate in, and then we brought another roommate into a 2-bedroom house. We had 4 people living there. We had converted the entry area, the staircase where you walk up into a Queensland, where you can see between the floor, between the floorboard gaps, into a little bedroom. And it was actually quite cozy and quite nice. It got a bit cold, but we saved money on it. It gave us a good advantage. And, it was good. And then eventually we decided to start a business. And in this business, we ended up employing some staff, our own architectural practice. And at one point I had 4 people working from the house. I had myself living there, or Rachel and I living there in the front room. Then we also had the master bedroom that we'd rented out to another person. And we had Rachel's sister, who was living with us in the time, in another room. So I had 4 staff. I had myself and Rachel living there and another 2 people. I think the most, in a little 2-bedroom house. So, whenever their real estate came and did inspections, I don't think they were too impressed, but we kept paying the rent and they were happy. They were happy. That was how we managed to keep our rent cheap and down. I think at one point we were paying $50 a week on rent. So, experts decry the grotesque $688 million construction stimulus as renters are snubbed again. Well, here's the thing. The idea of this stimulus is to get people spending money. Handing out money to renters isn't going to get people spending money. This will be pulling projects forward to try and keep activity in the economy. That's the point of it. It's not about a snubbing. They don't even care about what people are, it's not like a handout. They don't care what people are building. They just want to get money moving around. That's the biggest concern that they have right now. Housing policy researcher Chris Martin has been furious about the federal government's response to the emerging rental crisis during the pandemic. Well, it's my understanding that rents are going down. That's the problem with property investors. They put in a, hashtag, everyone's going on hashtag rent strike, and people can't get evicted. So it seems like they're really favoring renters, aren't they? The eviction memorandum announced by the Prime Minister Scott Morrison in April, and the UNSW City Futures Research Centre researcher says should have been the bare minimum. With 8 million renters in Australia, direction on how to negotiate a rent decrease for the potentially millions who had lost income was totally absent, and Mr. Morrison insisted tenants would still have to pay rent or reduced income. Yes, that seems perfectly reasonable, guys. The expectation is that people should have... I know this is going to be blaming the victim. I'm waiting for the comments. People should have money set aside, a 3 to 6 months emergency fund. If you haven't, and you've got into this mess, now that's the lesson you take away from it. You cut your spending until you get that together. So you don't depend on massive government interventions, because you can't trust them, guys. You can't trust them. You don't know what's going to happen. It could flip-flop and change. You need to be independent. I know that's a strange concept for a lot of Australians. And now, as the burgeoning rental crisis fades from attention, the $688 million home builder scheme has been announced. It is grotesque, Dr. Martin said. Public funds could be spent getting tradespeople to work on social housing, building new or repairing old, to make assets that generate public good over the long term. Okay. Sure. No, that sounds good. But the issue is, you're not going to get the same bang for buck. It's that simple. The cost-benefit analysis isn't there. You're getting over, what, $1,300 after 5 flows through the economy of that money because individuals, private individuals, are contributing their own. Much more than the state. You're getting more money. And, how much will come back in tax? That's a whole other argument as well. That's the benefit. You're keeping people out of social housing by keeping the economy going. We don't want more social housing. You don't want it. That's a last resort. You want people to have jobs. You want people to have self-respect. You don't want people to have to depend on public housing. It's that simple. Okay, isn't that the aim of a civilization? To foster independence? Maybe my old-fashioned ideas, it's not PC enough, guys. The system is stacked against people, I'd have to work. To earn money. We can't have that. Instead, they'll be spent on making someone's $750,000 reno a $775,000 reno. Grotesque. Mate, yeah, come on. The new scheme is a $25,000 grant for those building a new home or making substantial renovations to their existing home if the home isn't worth more than $1.5 million. Exactly. This isn't aimed at the rich. This is going to be pulling in property owners and, frankly, people who are probably better at managing their finances and are going to get better bang for buck from it than just pumping it into social housing. The value of the renovation or building work needs to be between $150 and $750, and the yearly income of the residents must not exceed $120. I think it's $125 for singles and $200 for a couple. And that ain't that much, everyone. That isn't that much. Across Australia, many renters feel abandoned. While the eviction ban gave some respite, others say a lack of leadership has left them with rental arrears a landlord is refusing to forgive, with the clock to eviction slowly ticking down. Barring an extension, eviction proceedings will begin again in New South Wales in less than a fortnight. Well, it's life. Life's tough. Should have put some money aside for these type of issues, guys. Melbourne renter Joshua Badge had a high-profile fight with his property manager and landlord, which played out on Twitter and ended with a rent reduction without any debt accruing. But he knows he's one of the lucky ones. So he's discussing this crap on Twitter. I hate him already. Just for that. We're not in the situation of the people who are going to be in debt, in a debt trap, who will be kicked out if they don't pay their arrears, he says. It's really clear the government's solution has been to protect people with money and assets over everyone else. It's lining the pockets of investors and landlords with public money. You're getting government stimulus. You're getting JobKeeper. That's to help people continue paying their rent. Oh, bloody hell. I mean, okay, he's from Collingwood in Melbourne. What do we expect, guys? I bet you... I mean, look at him. Look how skinny he is. He's got no meat on him. I'm going to make a complete... and I mean, this is done intentionally to elicit an emotional response, and I'm falling to it. But I'm going to make a complete assumption that he's a vegan green voter and drinks 4 soy lattes a day, and that's why he can't afford to pay his rent. This situation is being described as a debt bomb by some. If JobKeeper exits and JobSeeker reverts to its lower level in September, it would only compound the problem. Thousands could be kicked out, with rent debt and no way of finding a new home. But Treasurer Josh Frydenberg on Wednesday acknowledged that this could be an issue and said the government would revise JobKeeper in July. Well, they're going to look at it. I suspect they're not going to pull the plug on it, guys. And a sensible landlord with understanding of what's going on would take steps to ensure they keep their tenants. Unless you got someone, airing what should be private on Twitter, then maybe you should just evict him just to teach him a lesson. Humble him a bit. The way the government has responded to the situation has been deficient in a number of respects. The ban made sense because we needed to keep people healthy and safe in their own home, but it was never the broader solution. They threw in a half measure and left it at that. In Perth, renters and soon-to-be homeowner Nikki Rivendran feels powerless as she moves to negotiate with her property managers. She and her partner have been saving to buy a new home and will have one built by a developer in about 6 months. But her lease is almost up and she's going to have to fight with a property manager to get a periodic agreement. They can't afford to pay rent and their mortgage if their home is completed before the agency standard 12 months lease is up. So negotiate or go somewhere else or put your stuff in storage and find a short-term accommodation. There's plenty of options. Are people this lazy? They haven't planned for that? What happens if there was a latent condition on their site that they didn't even know about? They probably didn't even think about these things. Miss Rivendran lost all her income during the pandemic while her partner lost about half. She felt the lack of guidance on how to negotiate with landlords and property managers through the crisis has left her in a weak position. Why isn't your husband negotiating? Maybe this is sexist Florian coming through here, but shouldn't it be the man's job to negotiate this stuff? Maybe I don't know. Women can be really tough and they can be fantastic negotiators too. But she doesn't sound like it, does she? She's pandering. Oh, I need advice from the government. She doesn't have, she's not an iron lady, is she? I can see a lot of women that will be, bloody tough with the negotiating, but a lot of them will cave. They don't want to. They are conflict avoiders. So why isn't the husband doing it? Why isn't he going, nah, we're staying here. This is the deal. If not, we're leaving. And then you leave. That's called negotiation. It's simple. There's your advice right there, free of charge. 100%, she says. I've seen it on the media and it's always about homeowners. We're not homeowners yet, so as renters, we just feel like we haven't any legs to stand on. I mean, here's the question. The real question, why the hell do people partake in these articles? Do they want to get their shot of fame? Does he have political aspirations, Why is she going in here? Does she hope it'll make a difference with her negotiation with the landlord? Is that why people do this stuff? Why do they get involved in these things? Why are they airing their personal issues in articles like this? For the attention? I guess it's Twitter, isn't it? I mean, I'm talking about it on YouTube, so I guess it's no different. University of Sydney urban planner and policy analyst Nicole Grurin said cash for homeowners was the easy path for the coalition to take, and it was an extension of the status quo. Well, yes, they're right there. That's the problem. There's no innovation in any of this. There's no special economic regions where, okay, we remove requirements for minimum wage, but we also remove all these other expenses and taxes to offset it, to allow for businesses to actually compete on a global scale. There's nothing innovative like that. There's not the political will in our civilization to do that. There's only a few people at the fringe who would be, discussing it. Sure, you've got libertarian people in politics discussing it. You've got some of the more, conservative or free market people discussing it, but there doesn't seem to be the political will to actually explore these options. It's why we need to shift the window and get a mix of people in politics, in parliament, so you get more debate happening. So I'm extremely disappointed that the first announcement about supporting the construction sector sends resources to home renovations that would likely happen anyway, she said. I know the policy tends towards supporting comfortable home owners. Decades of Australian housing policy decisions have been made in a way that's advantageous to home owners and property investors at the expense of low-income renters, first-home buyers, and the social and affordable housing sectors. I recently went to some affordable housing or social housing for homeless or at-risk needs people in Brisbane. We visited a lady from church there, and I was shocked. I was just shocked at the quality that they got, the size and the finish, and I couldn't believe it. So some of the social housing, guys, it's not that cheap. It isn't built cheap. It's expensive. Often the government, when they can ignore all of the town planning requirements, they just designate the land and do whatever the hell they want. So you're getting a house built next to you that's breaking all the rules because they can, So just keep that in mind. Professor Gurin says the money would be better spent on improving the quality of private rental and low-income housing so residents wouldn't freeze through winters and sweat through heat waves, or defuse the debt bomb that could make thousands homeless in a week. It's called blankets. Okay, I live in a 100-year-old house with no insulation in the floors. You can see through gaps. You just deal with it. How soft and weak have we become as a people? It's such a lost opportunity. I'm speechless. No, you're not. You're talking a lot. I'm so shocked and horrified by this, she says. To see money funneled to people who have the resources to undertake major renovations right now is the final insult. It's to keep the economy moving. That's the point. They don't give a damn. Putting it into public housing isn't going to get the same impact. Financially, it's not going to get the same impact. You're going to then have more people unemployed and more people needing public housing, so there'll be more pressure on it. How long are the wait times already anyway? See, and I mean, the MGTOW guys are going to jump up about this. Where does the majority of public housing go? Let me know in the comments if you know where it goes. Economists agree the measures were questionable. AMP Capital's Shane Oliver says that thinking may be to ensure the viability of the construction industry, so JobKeeper to tradies could be cut and therefore reduce the government's bill for the program. Mr. Oliver says the government's scheme could also depress home values because it would discourage young people from buying existing homes, and with immigration, Australia's biggest driver for population growth near zero, very few would be interested in buying older homes. So there you'll have make housing more affordable, so less demand for social housing. Isn't that the game, guys? You'd have to expect in the back of their minds to bring immigration back. Yeah, they will. Industry Super Australia chief economist Stephen Anthony says politics aside, demand-side stimulus such as putting cash in the hands of renovators was poor policy. It doesn't do anything on the supply side of the economy, and what it does is jack up the prices and unimproved values, he says. And a decade of lost monetary policy has made that worse. Now it's all well and good for people with resources, but for everyone else, the young and key workers and people who do essential jobs, they're totally priced out. What if those young key workers keep their jobs? What if they're a tradie, a young couple? Nurse and tradie. Tradie, his job's been lost. They've been saving up for their mortgage. Maybe that's the example there. Cut in half. What if that keeps them going? That's the point of this, guys. It seems all so one-sided, isn't it? This is why I don't think UBI would ever be possible in Australia. You've got too much tall poppy syndrome. Once Gina Reinhardt gets the UBI, could you imagine the articles that would be written, how people would get jealous and upset? Elsewhere, the policy has been panned by critics, but cautiously welcomed by the housing industry. In academic circles, increasing the supply of social housing is considered the best long-term way to fix affordability and improve outcomes for poorer Australians. Who wants to live in social housing? Do people actually want to live in social housing? How many of you watching live near social housing and see the impact that it has? It all depends on the people that go in there. Sometimes social housing can be completely fine. Sometimes it can be a nightmare, particularly if you've got long-term unemployed with social issues. It can affect the whole area. Apart from the eviction ban, the Prime Minister's contribution to a solution to the rental crisis has been suggesting landlords and tenants should work together to find a resolution that worked for both parties, and that the eviction ban doesn't mean there's a memorandum on rents. The issue was left unresolved by the National Cabinet and cast to the states and territories to separately find a solution. Some still have not introduced any measures, including bans on evictions. I think ultimately no one should have to play chicken with their landlord to get a rent reduction in what is still a pandemic situation, Dr. Martin said. And there should not be any confusion that people in hardship will get their rent reduced, not merely deferred. I remain with the view that the better approach would be a mandated rent reduction that shared the cost of the pandemic recession. Bloody hell. So much intervention in the market they're calling for, guys. This is insane. This really is. This is the thing. It's going to be worse off for the renters if they start mandating stuff like this. You want landlords to have to start to get slapped in the face. You want people to leave. You want to pull out, go, no, screw you, I'm getting $50 less there. You either meet it or I leave. You want people to do that. Okay? You want people to have the balls to actually get up and move and not go depend, oh, government, please make it easy for me. This article is just laziness. It's just laziness, honestly. President Adrian Kelly told Domain in April he didn't support deferrals because those who couldn't afford rent could struggle with the debt later. Oh, don't worry, they'll just afterpay it. People will just afterpay it. I have a personal view that if a tenant can't pay the rent and they get to the end of the 6 month and they have a large debt, I don't think that we'll be able to deal with in a practical way, he said. The last thing we want to see is a tenant or a property owner who has lost employment with children and a family to feed is for them to come out of the crisis with a really bad financial situation. And we're gonna see that, guys. This is what happens in a recession. There's a whole lot of people learning about what a recession is and how it can be really bad and why people need to prepare and have 3 to 6 months set aside for emergencies. This is the problem. No one has. No one has. How many people have got $90 set aside? And then they're crying poor to the government. They're wanting massive state intervention in our personal lives, even more than we have. I think Australia's going to pivot left, guys. So nothing's changed, he says. Exactly how it's going to play out is part of the problem. Dr. Martin says this expectation that tenants should continue to pay their rent even though they've lost some or most of their income demonstrates a sense of entitlement, especially considering landlords were statistically much better off than renters. Some were not. Some were not, guys. That's bullshit. And, well, is it entitled to be paid what someone agrees to pay you? Or is it entitled to expect the state to come in and, you know, take the shoulder the burden for you and put all rules in place? What do you think the definition is? Has the term entitlement changed, everyone? But insisting, and smart landlords are giving their tenants deals. They're giving them breaks, but that won't make the news, guys. It's not driving the political agenda we're seeing here. It's all manifesting, isn't it? By insisting on continued rent payments out of individual tenants' reduced income or the public purse or out of their super, at least until ASIC warned them off that, they are selfishly putting themselves ahead of really precarious households, he said. The situation is unjust and tenants are right to be angry about it. The Queensland government alone initially planned to ban rent debt in its support package, but rescinded it after coming under fierce lobbying from landlords and agent groups. In public statements by Real Estate Institute, it is clear that in negotiations over rents, agents are pushing hard for more deferrals and not real reductions, Dr. Martin said. So while tenants lost wages are gone for good, many landlords are insisting that the rent is not gone for good. It's going to come back after the memorandum. A rent deferral is a time bomb for individual tenants, and if it is happening on a wide scale, there is a looming problem for the sector and the governments. And once again, another article where there's absolutely no mention about individuals ensuring they have enough of a buffer, they have an emergency fund to account for these unknown circumstances. Not once. I haven't seen that in one article I've read. But then again, that's probably that victim blaming I'm tending to do. It's just getting annoying. I'm seeing more and more of a pivot to the hard left here, guys. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching. If you're a fan and want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can. You can join us here on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via using our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time.